The Ifrit was silent, apparently ignoring Kataba's question. Kataba's face went cold, and he immediately used the compulsion of the Ifrit core. Finally, the Ifrit's indistinct, raw, and wary voice finally came from the core. Nightmare. That human's bosom holds the already extinct nightmare. A creature from the same era as me. A mortal foe. What? Upon receiving the answer, Kataba couldn't help but shudder and glance in Wang Chong's direction. The weak and barbaric lands of the Central Plains had a creature from the same era as the Ifrit, one that could stand against it? How was that possible? The killing intent within Kataba's heart intensified even more. The world could not permit two world-destroying beasts to exist at the same time. No matter what, Wang Chong had to die, and that object he had to be destroyed. Roar! There was a rush of wind, and before Kataba could join the Ifrit and deal with Wang Chong, the king ape bellowed. It leaped into the air, its two arms and body moving with an agility that belied its size as it attacked Kataba. Lord Junior Guardian, Lord Xianxia, Secretariat Advisor, no matter what, you have to hold Kataba. You can't let him get away. Wang Chong sent a mental wave into the minds of Wang Zhongxi, Zhangqiu Jianxiong, and Li Junxian. Although he was on the front line, he had a part of his mind controlling the king ape, so he was able to keep close watch on Kataba. His every movement and intention was revealed to Wang Chong. The Ifrit could annihilate the Great Tang, and if it were joined by Kataba, who could stop them? He could not allow them to get together. Nightmare Beast, what way do you have of dealing with this Ifrit? Wang Chong sent a part of his mind to communicate with the Nightmare Beast's core. He no longer had time to worry about the Nightmare Beast's secrets and question it about how the Nightmare Beast from Yellow Emperor Xuanyuan's generation could develop a connection with a legendary Ifrit of Arabia. His first priority was to eliminate the Ifrit. With each additional moment the Ifrit lived, the Tang army and all of the people of the Great Tang Empire spent a little longer in a most dire crisis. The consequences of allowing the Ifrit into the Central Plains were unimaginable. The Ifrit is a creature born from the laws of the world. Their bodies are made of pure fire element. No matter how you attack it, it's impossible to kill them. But while these Ifrits are called indestructible, their greatest fear is the Nightmare Beasts and our inextinguishable minds. Like the Ifrits, we are also creatures born of the world and are similarly difficult to destroy. From a certain perspective, we share an origin, though our essences are different. However, the Ifrits have a major weakness. In the ancient era, in the early age of humans, the Ifrits stepped into the Eastern world, but they ran into us Nightmare Beasts. We heavily damaged their origins, killed several of them, and pushed them back. Ifrits possess a natural mental resistance, which I'm sure you've already experienced, but this psychic defense is useless against Nightmare Beasts. This is their natural flaw, and it is why the Ifrits tried to destroy us Nightmare Beasts. In order to reach this goal, they allied with the humans of the West that they loathed so much, using them to agitate the experts of the East into killing us. The Ifrit core in that human's hand is what they used in order to seal their alliance with the Western humans. We once captured a Western psychic energy practitioner and read his memories, so we knew what was going on, but in the end, they still succeeded. I am the last Nightmare Beast of our lineage, and this was only because Little Grass protected me. But I'm too weak right now and have yet to fully mature. In addition, you absorbed half of my strength at the time, so there's no way I can stand against it. If you permit it, I have a way that can allow me to rapidly mature. This is the only way I can gain the power to fight it. The Nightmare Beast became very hesitant toward the end, a fearful and worried tone in its voice. Wang Chong frowned. Just when he was about to ask the Nightmare Beast what this way was, he recalled the memories he had obtained from it and understood. You want to capture those humans, so you can extract their psychic energy and strengthen yourself, Wang Chong said. Yes. After a moment of hesitation, the Nightmare Beast affirmed. The Nightmare Beast could capture humans and make them kill each other while at the same time draining their psychic energy. This was a most terrifying and extremely wicked act. In the Battle of Zhuelu, the Nightmare Beast had used this ability to great effect, but in helping the Yellow Emperor defeat the forces of Qiyu, it earned the fear of the Yellow Emperor's subjects. In the end, in order to protect its life, the Yellow Emperor was forced to dig out a hole and seal it within. This sort of conduct was in clear violation of major taboos. And currently, it could not determine if its current master would permit such heinous acts. But to its surprise, moments after the nightmare beast spoke, it heard Wang Chong reply in an unconcerned manner. So that's what it was. Go then. As long as they're not Tang, kill as many as you want. As long as you can deal with the Ifrit and defeat the Arabs, I don't care what methods you have to resort to, Wang Chong immediately said. The nightmare beast's concerns were not at all shared by Wang Chong. On the battlefield, soldiers fought each other for the right to live, and besides, Arabia was the great Tang's mortal foe. The more Arabs that died, the greater the advantage for the great Tang. The nightmare beast was immediately energized upon hearing Wang Chong's reply. Master, protect my core. It will be just a few moments until I can help you deal with the Ifrit. A moment later, the nightmare beast's mental body shot out of the core, pitch black all over, and vanished into the Arab ranks. Upon a closer look, one would realize that the nightmare beast's mental body looked the same as its original body. Ra! You can't escape. Surprisingly, the Ifrit was unnerved by the nightmare beast's actions. Giving up on Wang Chong, it immediately punched at the nightmare beast's mental body. But the nightmare beast moved with extreme speed, suddenly accelerating and easily dodging the Ifrit's attack. Rumble! A torrent of lava dropped down on an unlucky group of Arab cavalry, causing them to scream as they dropped to the ground. A moment later, a massive shift occurred on the battlefield. In a flash of light, the nightmare beast transformed into a dark cloud that began to swiftly shuttle across the battlefield. Plush! 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 With no warning at all, Arab horsemen across the battlefield began to roar like they were insane and charge at the Arab horsemen by their side. Bastard! What are you doing? An Arab horseman who had been attacked was both shocked and enraged. But before he could react, a scimitar had separated his head from his neck. But this was far from the extent of the nightmare beast's power. Kyle! For Arabia, two groups of Arab cavalry were working in concert against the Great Tang. But suddenly, they clenched their teeth, their faces turning red, and they charged at each other. Plush! 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 Their blades bit into flesh, and in short order, thousands of Arab cavalry were fighting each other and collapsing in pools of blood. The chaos was originally restricted to a very small area, but this area began to rapidly expand. The Arab cavalry caught up in mindless bloodlust originally numbered several thousand, but this figure soon expanded to tens of thousands of people, and then 100,000, 200,000. In the distance, Abu Muslim and Adnan paled. Damn it! What are they doing? Split up. Hurry and split them up. Adnan cursed. This had happened too quickly. Not even someone as strong as Adnan could understand why the army had suddenly begun to fight with itself. Watch out! Something strange. Abu Muslim suddenly sensed something and ordered his army to quickly retreat to avoid the chaotic region. In the rear, Su Hanshan, Li Sai, and young Master Qingyang glanced at each other. For the hard-pressed Tang army, this was a blessing from the heavens. Ballisti loose! Though Su Hanshan didn't know the exact details, he instinctively knew that this had to do with Wang Chong. Wind, forest, fire, water. MO Saber Unit, charge. With a mighty war cry, the MO Saber Unit marched out from the rear. Their long sabers raised high into the air as they pressed forward with unstoppable momentum. Bang! The MO Saber Unit was unperturbed as the Arab cavalry charged at them, and with a sweep of their 10-foot-long sabers, at least 7,000 Arab cavalry were felled. With the entry of the MO Saber Unit, the battle on the right flank quickly turned back in favor of the Great Tang. At the same time, Li Sai led the Wuxian cavalry as a sharp sword, plunging into the battlefield and pushing aside all resistance they encountered. Using the chaos the Nightmare Beast's attack had created, the Tang were mobilizing their forces and increasing their advantage. At this moment, the crux of the battle now rested entirely on the Nightmare Beast. Release! 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 Something is weird. Kill it! Countless arrows howled through the air at the source of the chaos, and some of the more strong-minded Arab generals were able to catch the blur of the nightmare beast as it passed by them and ran off in pursuit of it. The nightmare beast had no physical body, so neither arrows nor attacks of stellar energy dealt any damage to it. Moreover, as hundreds of thousands of Arab soldiers fell into a berserk frenzy and killed each other, the nightmare beast absorbed more and more psychic energy. During the Northwest expedition, Wang Chong had heavily injured the nightmare beast and taken half its psychic energy, leaving it extremely weak. But in the blink of an eye, the nightmare beast was restored, the strength of its psychic energy twice its former strength and continuing to rapidly climb. 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Even Wang Chong was alarmed at the soaring power of the nightmare beast. At first, the nightmare beast was only capable of giving the Ifrit a wounding jab, but now that its psychic energy was recharged, it rapidly began to grow toward the same world-destroying level as the Ifrit. For the nightmare beasts that controlled the mind, the battlefield was the finest feeding ground. Deep underground in that lightless world, it was rare for people to enter, and even after several thousand years, only a few hundred had ever come to its doorstep. In that environment, it had been hard enough for the nightmare beast to keep itself alive. But now that it was in a battlefield of millions of soldiers, the tiger had come down from the mountain to hunt. It now had 10 times its original power, 11 times, 12 times. Even the Ifrit was shocked at the growth of the nightmare beast, and as the nightmare beast continued to wreak havoc, hundreds of thousands of Arab soldiers began to fight amongst themselves. Like the Ifrit, the nightmare beast was originally a world-destroying creature. If it did not have this capability, so many officials would not have been calling for it to be executed after the Battle of Zhuolu. This was the true face of the nightmare beast, the one that the Ifrit truly feared. Ah! Screams resounded through the air as tens of thousands of Arab cavalry were brought down, unable to resist in the slightest. In the distance, Qutb scowled, both alarmed and furious. Ifrit, what are you doing? Hurry up and destroy it. Qutb felt a hint of anxiety. In the blink of an eye, the Arab army had lost hundreds of thousands of men. If this continued, then regardless of how many soldiers the Arabs had, they would all be slaughtered. Damn it! The Ifrit was also furious as could be. Its body seethed with flames, torrents of lava transforming into massive molten fists, but the nightmare beast dodged all of its attacks. Not only did the Ifrit fail to wound the nightmare beast, it even managed to kill a significant number of Arab cavalry, infuriating it even more. On this battlefield, the nightmare beast was the only thing that could hurt it. No one understood more than the Ifrit just how damaging its psychic energy could be. But the Ifrit could do little about the nightmare beast if it devoted itself to fleeing. Forget that thing for now. Kill the human. He must have something on his body that lets him control that creature. Qutb was on the verge of exploding from anger. At this moment, there was a sharp whistle, and the air was cut apart like paper as 3 long whips made of lava howled toward Wang Chong. But Wang Chong had apparently predicted this, immediately blinking backward and avoiding this lethal attack. Qutb had reacted much more quickly than anticipated. He had an item allowing him to control the Ifrit, so he swiftly concluded that Wang Chong must have had something that let him control the nightmare beast and order the Ifrit to change targets. Unfortunately, when the evil grew 1 foot taller, the righteous would rise by 10 feet, and Wang Chong had managed to avoid the abrupt assault. Master, lend me a hand. Upon sensing that Wang Chong was in danger, the nightmare beast quickly spoke into his mind. If it had been given enough time in this vast army, the nightmare beast could have even grown to a level where it could easily kill the Ifrit, but unfortunately, the Ifrit had changed its target and would not give him the chance. Its priority now was to eliminate the Ifrit. Wang Chong was confused at first, but when he realized that the nightmare beast's core was trembling, he understood what he needed to do. Bang! Wang Chong poured psychic energy into the nightmare beast's core, and once the nightmare beast fused its energy with Wang Chong's, the nightmare beast began its counterattack. Rumble! Before anyone else could react, their combined strike of psychic energy tore through the air like a lightning bolt. Kaboom! It exploded onto the Ifrit's body. Awoo! The seemingly indestructible Ifrit seemed to suffer a heavy blow, its flames scattering and its massive body staggering backward 7 or 8 steps. Even an ordinary person could sense that this blow had left the Ifrit badly wounded and in immense pain. Earlier, Wang Chong and all the other top experts of the Tang army had attacked the Ifrit for so long, yet they had failed to inflict any wounds. On the contrary, the Ifrit had only gotten stronger and stronger. But one strike from the nightmare beast had left the Ifrit heavily wounded. This was simply too shocking. Awoo! The Ifrit howled in misery, but while it had been injured, it would not sit around and wait for death. It swung both fists, drawing up lava from the ground that gathered on its arms, then unleashed it over a wide area. Both Wang Chong and the nightmare beast were too sharp. A single attack would be easily dodged, so the Ifrit was forced to change tactics. Swish! Golden whips of flame brighter than the sun swept toward Wang Chong. This time, instead of just 3, there were 17 of them, approaching Wang Chong like the tentacles of an octopus. Not only that, gouts of lava erupted from the shoulders of the Ifrit, transforming into new whips that sliced through the air as they joined the assault against Wang Chong. These whips could cover a large area and move around as they pleased, making them almost impossible to defend against. Human, die for me, the Ifrit howled in its savage and raspy voice. It now also understood that the key to the nightmare beast lay with this human. But when the Ifrit's flame whips were several dozen feet away from Wang Chong, another powerful wave of psychic energy arrived and slammed into the Ifrit's mind like a steel truncheon. If one could peer through the dazzling flames, one might see a golden barrier in the Ifrit's mind, rippling with psychic energy. This was a powerful fortress created through the Ifrit's power and psychic energy. In the past, the Ifrit had relied on this barrier to kill countless human psychic energy practitioners, even annihilating an extremely powerful civilization of psychic energy practitioners. But the nightmare beast seemed to ignore this barrier, as if it didn't even exist. Bang! The Ifrit howled in pain, and its sharp whips that could slice through the fabric of space immediately collapsed back into lava that weakly rained back on the ground. Everything in the world had its weakness, and while the Ifrits considered themselves indestructible, the psychic energy attacks of the nightmare beasts were their bane. And while the nightmare beasts had formidable psychic energy, they had extremely fragile physical bodies that were no match for the Ifrits. This was precisely why the Ifrits had joined with the powerful psychic energy practitioners of the West in a long-ago era to destroy the nightmare beasts, eventually exterminating this species until the only one left was the one under the protection of Yellow Emperor Shenyuan. Boom! The Ifrit howled in pain. Each time it tried to attack or get close to Wang Chong, it would suffer another terrifying attack from the nightmare beast. The nightmare beast was also paying a price for this, but it was within the range of what it could endure. Boom boom boom. Once, twice, thrice. Wang Chong continued to pour psychic energy into the nightmare beast's core, and the nightmare beast continued to mold this psychic energy into sharp awls that pierced into the Ifrit's mind. The Ifrit could only howl in pain as it fell back again and again. It was like there was an invisible barrier that was constantly pushing it back. In these circumstances, the Ifrit couldn't even get close to Wang Chong, much less attack the nightmare beast's core. Bastard! Kataba nastily scowled. He had been constantly observing that area with his psychic energy, and things were definitely not going how he wanted. Get out of my sight! Kataba bellowed, a golden halo erupting from his body. While this halo was made of stellar energy, it seemed as tough as steel and contained immense power. Boom! Kataba's enraged blow immediately blasted everyone away. Roar! As everyone was blown back, Wang Chong took control of the king ape and had it lunge at Kataba's back, its arms swinging like iron rods. Buzz! Kataba's eyes flashed with anger. Kataba had had countless chances to break out of the encirclements, been capable at any point of killing his foes with a single blow of overwhelming power. But each time, Wang Chong would use the king ape to attack in a crude yet effective manner, and these attacks would always come at just the perfect moment, in concert with the attacks of the others, forcing Kataba back into the encirclement. Damn beast! At this moment, a black crescent moon ring on Kataba's thumb suddenly flashed. From the inward side of the ring, a small silver needle extended and stabbed into Kataba's finger, absorbing a drop of essence blood into the ring. The moon god's forbidden ring. This was a divine ring from the era in which the Arabian Empire worshipped the moon god. The legends said that it was manifested from the ancient moon god's divine power and possessed unbelievable might. But with the passage of time, the Arabian Empire ceased to believe in the moon god, and the omnipotent and omniscient moon god religion had become heresy. Qutb was the greatest legend of the Arabian Empire, and in his early days, he had been the most pious missionary of the true God. Unless it were absolutely necessary, he naturally would not recklessly use an object belonging to a false god. After activating the power of the moon god's forbidden ring, Qutb flushed red, and behind his body, there was a brief flash of a black crescent moon. And then his aura suddenly changed. Boom! As everyone stared, Qutb suddenly turned around and thrust out a palm, immediately stopping the king ape's thunderous strike. Qutb's arm grabbed and twisted, and there was a sharp crack. The king ape howled in pain, for Qutb had used some bizarre method to break the king ape's arm. Everyone paled at this sight. "Let me see how long you can keep this up." Qutb's face chilled as he waved his hand. A dark red and viscous energy exploded out of his body and slammed into the king ape, blasting it into the ground. This time, the king ape's eyes dimmed. It had clearly been badly injured. Bang! There was a cold flash of light, and then a beam of brilliant sword chi cut through the air toward Qutb. But Qutb's white robe merely rustled, upon which a vast wave of energy swept out and staved off Li Juanxian's attack. Bang! His robe rustled again, and 1,000 feet away, Li Juanxian groaned, his sword chi obliterated as he was blown back. Heaven opener! As Qutb was throwing back Li Juanxian, the sky darkened, and then a massive fist covered in shadows hurtled toward Qutb. This fist exuded an upright and imperial aura, infused with the energy of the universe. But Qutb merely raised his head and punched back. A massive black fist, also infused with subtle realm energy, hurtled toward Wang Zhongxi. "Your cultivation's not bad, but you're still a little lacking." As he said this, the two fists collided in the air. Qutb was correct. While Wang Zhongxi had also stepped into the subtle realm, he was lacking in experience. While Qutb appeared 50 or 60 years old, he was already more than 100. After countless bloody trials and tribulations, he had stepped into the subtle realm much earlier than Wang Zhongxi. The young war god of the Central Plains could not make up for this gap. Not good. Wang Zhongxi paled. He was already injured, and when he exchanged blows with Qutb, he clearly sensed that Qutb's power had soared to even greater heights, his stellar energy even more abundant and dense. Moreover, it was now infused with repulsive and piercing traits. This unique power pierced straight through Wang Zhongxi's stellar energy and directly impacted against his body. Whoosh! Wang Zhongxi's body trembled, his face turned white, and he vomited blood as he was blown back like a rag doll. Lord Junior Guardian, Zhangqiu Jianxiong, and Sishun, and Gao Xianji immediately rushed forward without regard for their safety. White Tiger's Universal Howl. 8 Ultimates Become One. War God's Descent. All three each used their strongest techniques, majestic waves of stellar energy sweeping over the world. A massive white tiger nearly 1,000 feet long, a massive sword that pierced to the heavens, and a savage-faced, 8-armed Turkic war god attacked Qutb from the southeast, southwest, and north respectively. At this moment, all three of them were moving like bolts of lightning. As three protector generals of the Great Tang, the three of them had built up an incredible level of cohesion through their previous battles, and their joint attack possessed a frightening power. But the three of them had still underestimated the power of the moon god's forbidden ring. Rumble! A black wave of energy swept out from Qutb. With one strike, it shattered Zhangqiu Jianxiong's white tiger, obliterated Gao Xianji's heaven-piercing sword, and blasted to pieces in Sichuan's 8-armed war god. Although all three of them were peak great generals, some of the strongest in the world, they had yet to step into the subtle realm. Meanwhile, Qutb had been a legend for more than 60 years. There was still a significant gap between them. Aya! The three of them were blasted away by Qutb. A clown's tricks. Qutb's face was cold, and he opened his hand, preparing to pursue Xianxia Jianxiong and Sishun and Gao Xianji. But then he glanced into the distance and saw that the Ifrit was being pushed back again and again by the combined attacks of Wang Chong and the Nightmare Beast, and then he heard the King Ape roar from behind him. Kitaba slightly frowned, and then he shot away, changing his mind and leaving the encirclement to rush to the Ifrit's aid. "I'll kill you once I kill that brat," Kitaba icily said before rushing off toward the Ifrit. It was important to kill Xianxia Jianxiong and the other great generals, but for Kitaba, it was even more important that he kill Wang Chong. Once the Ifrit died, the conquest of the East would be thrown into question. Kitaba could not permit this. "Master, be careful." As Kitaba began to move, the Nightmare Beast sensed it and shouted in warning. "That man is coming. His body has ripples of divine power, extremely similar to those from that bronze tree." The Nightmare Beast had absorbed the psychic energy of hundreds of thousands of people, so its senses were many times sharper than Wang Chong's. "What?" Wang Chong was alarmed to hear this. How could Kitaba's body be radiating divine power? And what was the bronze tree? The moon god tree? Wang Chong suddenly understood. In an ancient era, the region the Arabian Empire existed in was known for venerating a moon god, the same moon god represented by the moon god tree. There was no doubt that Kitaba was using another one of the moon god's treasures. "There's no time. Nightmare Beast, try and stop Kitaba. Don't let him get close. And we have to kill the Ifrit as quickly as possible." Wang Chong's face turned solemn, immense pressure weighing down on his shoulders. From his performance just now, it was likely that Kitaba had been in the subtle realm for a long time and had an even greater understanding of its powers than Wang Chong. In terms of strength, he was probably much stronger. In a direct clash, Wang Chong was not confident of his chances, and if he worked together with the Ifrit, Wang Chong's defeat was inevitable. "It's no good. This Ifrit has lived for far longer than me, and though I've absorbed a lot of psychic energy, I don't have enough time to stabilize it. Injuring it is easy, but killing it is an entirely different matter." Wang Chong and the Nightmare Beast were communicating using psychic energy. The Nightmare Beast also felt extremely pressured by Kitaba's approach. "There's only one way to kill it right now." "What is it?" Wang Chong hastily asked. He had asked out of blind hope, not really expecting the Nightmare Beast to have a way. "The sword of Shenyuan Master was originally used by Little Grass. It's extremely powerful, and as long as we pour our power into the sword, we can deal irreversible damage to the Ifrit." "But..." Wang Chong frowned as he hurriedly asked, "But what?" "But this will require consuming Master's heart blood, and it will also deal heavy damage to Master's mind and soul," the Nightmare Beast hesitantly said. It had naturally known about this method of using the Shenyuan sword from the very start, but the severe consequences of using it in this manner had left the Nightmare Beast wary. While Wang Chong was powerful, he was still far weaker than a legendary ancestor of humanity. So this was the case. Wang Chong had thought that it was something else, and he immediately relaxed upon hearing this. This battle was linked to the fates of the Great Tang and Arabia, to the fates of the countless people living on the Central Plains. Such a price was insignificant compared to victory in this battle. "Don't worry about it. We'll do as you propose. Kitaba is coming. Stop him," Wang Chong suddenly said. Boom! The Nightmare Beast and Wang Chong immediately began to work together. When Kitaba was still 1,000 feet away, a massive bolt of psychic energy, shaped into a sharp awl, slammed into Kitaba's mind. Boom! Kitaba's body trembled upon receiving the mental attack, and he almost instantly paused in midair. His blurry figure became clear, revealing his unpleasant and pale face. Even Kitaba was forced to focus when confronting the terrifying psychic energy of an ancient monster like the Nightmare Beast. But unlike the Ifrit, Kitaba simply paled. While his aura was wounded, his injuries were far less severe than the Ifrit's. After all, the Ifrit had no physical body. Its strongest trait was also its greatest weakness. But Kitaba was different. He had a hardy soul, and his pious belief made for a firm resolve. The fusion of soul and body additionally formed the strongest defense against purely mental attacks. Buzz! The mental attack crumbled. The Nightmare Beast's attack on Kitaba was not even 70% as effective as it was on the Ifrit. At this moment, even the Nightmare Beast developed an immense fear of Kitaba. But Wang Chong could not concern himself with such things. As the Nightmare Beast was holding back Kitaba, Wang Chong clenched the Origin Immortal Sword with his right hand, though perhaps it now needed to be called the Shenyuan Sword. He then made a small cut on his finger, drew out a trickle of heart blood, and inserted it into the Origin Immortal Sword. The fingers were connected to the heart, making this the best and fastest method to obtain heart blood. Once this was done, Wang Chong activated a hidden ability of the Shenyuan Sword. Buzz! The Shenyuan Sword's surface flashed with a bloody light, and then a powerful pull erupted from the blade. Wang Chong's boundless psychic energy and a part of his soul were immediately pulled into the sword. Rumble! The Shenyuan Sword fiercely shuddered, and his owner fused with sword. Their energies soared. Dark clouds began to roll in, and a dark figure began to manifest behind Wang Chong. This figure was 1,000 feet tall and wore a high crown and wide belt. Although it was merely a thin shadow, one could feel an aura of majesty and solemnity from its crown, an aura of a sovereign who received the reverence of all of humanity. At this moment, all beings in the world bowed to him. The Origin Immortal Sword, the Shenyuan Sword, finally revealed a hint of the power of humanity that it contained. At this moment, Wang Chong felt like his soul had gone several thousand years back in time, fusing together with that first ancestor of humanity, human Emperor Shenyuan, the progenitor of the culture of the Central Plains and the ancestor of all sovereigns. The dark figure created by the Shenyuan Sword was none other than the Nightmare Beast's previous master, Yellow Emperor Shenyuan. Buzz! Upon sensing this energy, the world-destroying Ifrit grimaced. What is that? The Ifrit anxiously cried out, sensing intense danger from that figure behind Wang Chong. Rumble! Not even waiting for Wang Chong to attack, it sundered open the earth, sending countless gouts of blazing hot lava gushing out and shooting toward Wang Chong in the sky like sharp swords. At the same time, the Ifrit opened its mouth and roared. A pillar of lava wreathed in flames exceeding 200,000 degrees shot out of its mouth toward Wang Chong. And in order to prevent Wang Chong from escaping, it created numerous whips that moved at speeds that the eye could not catch. They sliced through the air and surrounded Wang Chong. The Ifrit had forgotten about all of its injuries. It was obvious that Wang Chong's sacred sword had made it feel an unprecedented danger. Kitaba, help me kill him, the Ifrit cried out. Too late. Wang Chong's fingers clenched around the sword, his face ice-cold. With his heart blood and a part of his soul as the payment, Wang Chong had finally activated the sealed strength of the Shenyuan Sword. As he grasped the sword, he felt an unprecedented power. This power transcended space and time, gathering together all the power of the Central Plains and the power of the righteous path that had been accumulating for hundreds, thousands of years. This was the power of humanity, the power of emperors. Boom! Just as the Ifrit began to attack, Wang Chong poured his psychic energy and the Nightmare Beast's power into the Shenyuan Sword. Rumble! A bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, and time and space seemed to freeze. The world suddenly darkened, and then the image of a sword, as massive as a pillar of heaven, erupted from Wang Chong's hand. It crossed a distance of more than 7,000 feet in an instant and pierced through the Ifrit's body. Aha! This massive sword formed purely of shadows, giving off no ripples of energy, pierced through the Ifrit, and the Ifrit seemed to suffer the world's most terrifying attack, letting out a shriek of pure misery. This one attack had left an indelible wound on the Ifrit. Boom boom boom. Those gouts of lava, whips, and flames headed toward Wang Chong all collapsed, and even the high-temperature flames on the Ifrit's body explosively dispersed. Even the waves of heat that had covered the battlefield were halved. The world instantly became comparatively cool and refreshing. Everyone instantly knew that the Ifrit had truly been severely wounded. Kitaba's eyes went wide, and he gnashed his teeth and roared in extreme fury. He had the Ifrit core in his hand, so he understood its condition more than anyone else. The moment Wang Chong's gigantic shadow sword pierced through the Ifrit, he sensed the spherical mental barrier around the Ifrit's mind completely collapsing. The Ifrit's origin had been badly damaged and disordered, causing it to fall from its peak level. The Ifrit was a legendary being said to be unkillable, a monster out of the myths of Arabia. No one was able to kill it. By controlling it, one could control the world. Why was it that there was something like this in the Eastern world? Why was there something that could counter the Ifrit? There was nothing about this in the records of the Arabian Empire, not even in the records of that ancient civilization found in the well in Hamuhad. Qutaba felt an unprecedented shock and an irrepressible anger and killing intent. No one was allowed to treat his Ifrit like this. In this world, no one except him was permitted to possess the means to counter and deal with the Ifrit. One Ifrit core was more than enough. All of the East and all of the Great Tang needed to be totally destroyed. Nobody could stop him from unifying the entire world. Clang! His face pale, Qutaba suddenly waved his hand, upon which the moon god tree broke free of Lucas's grip, rose out of the earth, and shot forward in a dark streak across the sky into Qutaba's hand. Tang, you will pay a price for your deeds. When Arabia wins this battle, I will turn all of the central plains into a scorched husk. This is the price for opposing me. Qutaba's face became blurry and indistinct, but his cruel voice rang out as clearly as a bell. The Ifrit could not lose, nor could it die. In order to counteract his enemy's powers, there was only one method left. Ifrit, get close to me so that we can fuse. Once we fuse together, we'll destroy the Eastern world. The cold voice resounded through the world. A hazy white light began to radiate from Qutaba's body, while the moon god tree and moon god's forbidden ring began to exude black energy. This darkness began to resonate with Qutaba's white light and the Ifrit core. Not good. Master, stop it! The nightmare beast yelled into Wang Chong's mind. Even the nightmare beast felt an enormous danger at this time. Qutaba, the Ifrit core, the ancient moon god, the Ifrit. Not even the nightmare beast knew what would happen when all these things began to resonate with each other. But there was no doubt that it was bad for the Great Tang. The situation was dire. Bang! Space shuddered as Wang Chong gripped the sword, the massive dark figure behind him mimicking his actions. A moment later, a massive shadow sword slashed once more at the Ifrit. The Xianyuan sword could attack one's origin, and it was extremely effective against creatures like the Ifrit that were born from the world's laws. Just a few slashes paired with the nightmare beast's abilities would be enough to kill the Ifrit. But Wang Chong's reaction, while fast, was a step too slow. Roar! With a thunderous roar, the Ifrit gave up on Wang Chong and lunged in Qutaba's direction. The Ifrit was arrogant. As a creature that had lived since ancient times, the Ifrit had power beyond the mortal ken. Humans in its eyes were nothing but ants. So even though it was intelligent, it did not speak. Not out of inability, but disdain. But at this moment, this ancient creature also felt a deep fear and unease. Before Wang Chong, it experienced an intense and long-lost fear. Wang Chong's sword had slashed away the Ifrit's pride and obliterated its confidence. Even an Ifrit would fear death. Qutaba, let's fuse. Destroy the nightmare beast and this human. And I will agree to help you crush the East and forever regard you as king. The Ifrit's panicked bellow echoed across the skies. The Ifrit core was an object it had agreed to create as part of the terms of its agreement with those powerful psychic energy practitioners of the ancient era, and it had also been the one to create the fusion method, but the Ifrit was also unimaginably proud. Deep within its heart, it would never be willing to fuse with a creature it regarded as an ant. But it no longer had a choice. Fear. That young man floating in the air was reflected in its golden eyes. It had never imagined that it would be afraid of a human. That human, that terrifying human. As long as he was killed and that sacred sword destroyed, it did not care what price it had to pay, what dignity it had to sacrifice. Boom! As Wang Chong unleashed the power of the sacred sword, the Ifrit's massive body shot toward Qutaba in a streak of flame. At the same time, Qutaba exploded with light and flew with the moon god tree, Ifrit core, and moon god ring into the Ifrit's body. Ah! Time seemed to stop, and a moment later, Kitaba and the Ifrit raised their heads to the sky and gave inhuman howls of pain. In a flash, Kitaba's energy vanished, and the Ifrit's aura also substantially changed. Rumble! Dark clouds converged on all sides, and in the air, a massive black tree manifested. At the top of this black tree floated a dark crescent moon. And between the crescent moon and the divine tree, buzz, a pair of narrow, dark, and callous eyes opened, like a sleeping god beginning to awaken. The evil moon god. The great Tangside didn't know the story behind those massive eyes, but Adnan and Lucas, Kitaba's subordinates, instantly paled. The Arabian Empire venerated only the true god. As for the ancient moon god, it had been declared as heresy long ago. All of this was described in great detail in their historical records. No one had expected Kitaba to borrow the power of the moon god's tree and ring to summon the remnant will of the moon god. Your Holiness! All of Kitaba's generals on the battlefield became uneasy, but none of them dared to say anything. Ra! Under the gaze of the moon god and the black crescent moon, the Ifrit howled. As if enormous amounts of energy were being poured into it, the Ifrit's body began to enlarge at terrifying speeds. Its already immense body soon exceeded a height of 200 meters, and it seemed to break through some natural threshold and rise to an even higher realm. Whoosh! The flames on the Ifrit's body danced and swelled, and their color turned from bright yellow to a tyrannical black tinged with a dark red. These flames seemed even more dangerous than before. And the Ifrit's golden vertical eyes also changed shape after fusing with Kitaba, becoming a pair of human eyes. Kitaba's eyes. Wang Chong, upon seeing those eyes, was deeply stunned. Wang Chong had never encountered a monster like this before. Not even the behemoths could compare to it. And in those eyes, Wang Chong sensed unimaginable pressure and danger. This was a creature of unprecedented terror. Bang! At this moment, the massive shadow sword unleashed by the Shenyuan sword struck the Ifrit, but the results this time were completely different. Kaboom! A majestic explosion of psychic energy that far transcended the subtle realm was unleashed, but this new Ifrit merely trembled, its flames rippling for a moment. Although it had been stunned and weakened, it did not leave an indelible wound like the last attack. Wang Chong and the nightmare beast both grimaced. When the legend of Arabia and the world-destroying monster from ancient times fused, an entirely new creature was born, possessing the inextinguishable body of the Ifrit, its control over flames, and also Kitaba's supreme strength and formidable mental defenses, thus filling in the Ifrit's last weakness. And at the same time, it was absorbing power from the ancient moon god. The Ifrit reached a level of power far above its peak. It's useless. Starting now, all your attacks against me will be futile. All of you will burn to ash under my flames. Kitaba and the Ifrit spoke in unison, their voices suffused with extreme cruelty and danger, and the black flames around it rapidly churned, casting a bizarre blackness over the battlefield. Adnan, Lucas, Abu Muslim, I leave the Tang great generals to you. Lead our soldiers and wipe the Tang army out. Kitaba's cold and booming voice rumbled over the battlefield. All the Tang soldiers paled, and on the other side, Adnan and the others were invigorated. Arabia was a militaristic country that thrived on war and conquest. Even if Kitaba was borrowing the strength of the ancient moon god, as long as they could crush the East and unify the world, they did not care. Kill! Adnan roared, raising the blade of Mukalla and ordering his men to charge. Nearby, Abu Muslim was also ecstatic. Everyone, follow me. Kill! Abu Muslim's body seethed with killing intent, and as he charged forward, he actually rode past Adnan and led his men in a torrent of steel. Today, I will personally wash away my humiliation. Abu Muslim's eyes shone red. He had waited far too long for this day. The shame and contempt that had burdened him since Talas could finally be washed away. Kill! For the Caliphate! Upon hearing the voice of Kitaba and that massive Ifrit, all the Arab soldiers rallied and charged with renewed vigor at the Tang soldiers. Careful! All soldiers, stand ready! The hearts of the Tang soldiers, however, sank. Kitaba and the Ifrit had fused together, creating an even stronger existence, and now they had to face this vast sea of Arab cavalry with the defense line in complete disarray. Without the steel defense line, they were powerless to resist. Wang Chong, the formation is ready. As everyone paled, the formation elder's familiar voice traveling on a mental wave came from the north. What? Wang Chong was elated to hear this. Prepare to activate it. Leave the rest to me. Okay, the formation elder replied, and then his voice vanished. The mental wave returned, far to the north, where a lonely figure stood in the Mohian desert. The formation elder's brows were locked together in worry. He had no idea what was happening over there, but from the shockwaves of energy and the war cries of the Arabs, he could tell that the Great Tang was not faring well. I've done all I can. I hope that this helps you. A hint of worry in his eyes, the formation elder turned to the force of 7,000 some cavalry Wang Chong had placed under his command. Begin. Yes. The cavalry immediately split up into several dozen groups and vanished into the distance. As Wang Chong had instructed, the formation elder had laid down 70% of the Nine Heavens phenomena formation, and with this order, these cavalry were setting off to finish the last 30%. Bang! In the center of the Mohian desert, the formation elder placed the last formation banner into the sand. At that moment, the formation was complete, and the restless lands of the northwest began to shift. Kakrak! A massive bolt of lightning cleaved through the sky like a gigantic dragon, parting the skies. Endless dark clouds seethed and churned, converging as if pulled upon by some mysterious force. Silver snakes flashed in the low clouds, and everyone who saw them felt an immense pressure. What's going on? Everyone noticed this strange weather, and even the giant Ifrit paused, startled. Just when he was preparing to attack, he saw the phenomena in the sky and instinctively felt uneasy. The unprecedented war between East and West had caused dark clouds to cover the lands of the Northwest, and it was very normal for dark clouds to gather in these circumstances. But what made Kitaba uneasy was that these dark clouds had gathered too quickly. Moreover, the area covered by the phenomena was too vast, with a radius of several thousand li. This was clearly abnormal, and this didn't even consider the silver snakes of lightning dancing in the clouds. Wang Chong showed no hesitation, having predicted all this. Taking advantage of Kitaba's moment of distraction, Wang Chong accessed the Stone of Destiny and opened the power category in the list of rewards. Buzz! Wang Chong's eyes flashed, upon which countless lines began to converge and intertwine, swiftly forming a miniature model of the Northwest in his mind. The rolling landscape, the nearby Tibetan plateau, the western Turkic steppe to the northwest, the Mohian desert to the north, the city of steel to the south, the armies clashing on the ground, and the thick clouds overhead were all replicated in startling detail. Through this miniature model, Wang Chong could even see the spiritual energy of the world traveling along the paths of the Nine Heavens phenomena formation set down by the formation elder. The Nine Heavens phenomena formation was an ancient weather formation, but Wang Chong's intention was never to just create a localized storm. The weather phenomenon that had manifested was simply a lure. Not even the formation elder knew what Wang Chong really wanted. The conditions are right. I can begin. Time was short. For the first time since Karasin, Wang Chong used the power category of the Stone of Destiny, accessing the weather ability. User confirms creating a storm? The Stone of Destiny's emotionless voice rang out in Wang Chong's mind. Confirm. Wang Chong immediately said. User wishes to create a Class 20 storm. This level of weather phenomenon can only be created once certain conditions are fulfilled. Assessment beginning. Assessment complete. Conditions met. The storm user wishes to create is a top-level weather phenomenon and requires an expenditure of 100,000 points of destiny energy. Moreover, user has extremely high demands requesting far too large of an area, massively increasing the cost. This task requires 350,000 points of destiny energy. In addition, after 15 minutes, additional destiny energy will be consumed until user runs out of destiny energy or stops the storm. Does user confirm spending 350,000 points of destiny energy? The Stone of Destiny spoke once more, and this time, Wang Chong could see the massive Ifrit and its black flames. Kataba had already come back to his senses, and his eyes were looking over and exerting a massive pressure on Wang Chong. Wang Chong felt like his body was almost groaning under the pressure. Confirm, Wang Chong immediately said. For the current Wang Chong, 350,000 points of destiny energy was completely within his tolerance level, but the Class 20 storm he was getting in return would only last for 15 minutes, and any longer than that would rapidly consume his destiny energy. This was certain to be no small number. But Wang Chong could not worry about such things. Even if he consumed all the destiny energy he had, it was all worth it if he could defeat Kataba and the Arab army. Boom! The moment Wang Chong spoke, the lightning in the sky suddenly multiplied by more than 100 times. The bolts of lightning seemingly endless and possessing so much power that even a profound martial realm general would feel uneasy. Whew! A massive high-pressure vortex suddenly appeared in the north, from the direction of the Mohian Desert. The Nine Heavens phenomena formation had already created a massive vortex in the north, and after Wang Chong paid the 350,000 points of destiny energy to activate the Stone of Destinies, weather ability, the vortex instantly grew several times larger, engulfing more than half the Mohian Desert and rapidly developing into a storm that the Northwest had never before experienced. Whoosh! Turbulent winds surged out of the north, stirring up all the dust and loose rocks on the ground and blotting out the skies of the north. In the middle of the fierce winds, the Arab horsemen could feel numerous tiny objects pinging against their armor like raindrops. An Arab general snatched out and saw that he had grabbed a fistful of sand. This is sand from the Mohian Desert. The Arab general was taken aback. The battlefield was located quite a distance from this desert, and sand should not normally have been blown this far. This strange phenomenon made him extremely uneasy. Rumble. Fears and worries quickly turned into reality, and in the far north, piercing howls like the wails of ghosts began to rise. The earth began to shake, and then a terrifying yellow storm engulfed the world, surging toward the battlefield with unimaginable speed. Not good. Sandstorm. An Arab governor immediately bellowed amidst the ranks of the Arab soldiers, but there was no need for his warning. That destructive wall of sand had already swallowed up the horizon. There were deserts in the Arabian Empire as well, and sandstorms were not rare. After all, a creature like the camel was specifically evolved to deal with desert environments. But even the most experienced Arab felt a deep dread when they saw this sandstorm. Sandstorms took place in the Arabian Empire, but not on this level. Even the most terrifying sandstorm of the West was nothing compared to this. Get off your horses. Careful. Search for cover. The Arab generals began to call out warnings, but they had all underestimated the power of the sandstorm. A few seconds later, vast quantities of sand flooded the northwest like a giant wave, drowning the entire Arab army. Nay! Horses shrieked and people cried out in alarm as yellow sand pelted their armor. And in the blink of an eye, the entire army had fallen into disarray. The curtain of sand was so thick that it was hard to make out the comrades at their sides, let alone for officers to communicate with their soldiers. Adnan, Abu Muslim, Lucas, and the other Arab commanders paled. The officers roared and bellowed as they tried to gather their soldiers, but the moment they opened their mouths, sand would pour in, and their muffled words would quickly be scattered by the wind. And most terrifying of all was the intensifying winds. Ah! Arab horsemen on the northern end of the battlefield screamed in despair as they were lifted into the air like leaves. They tried to unleash their stellar energy, but their resistance was futile in front of the winds. Bang! An Arab horseman dropped from the sky and crashed to the ground, turning into a mangled pile of flesh. What's going on here? The terrifying sandstorm instantly scattered the vast Arab army, and no one was more shocked at this moment than Kataba. Kataba had never expected that his entire army would be brought so quickly to the verge of collapse. Moreover, even Kataba's black flame Ifrit was being affected by the intense winds, its flames significantly weakening. Although the effects were still not too severe, this was not a good sign. You again. Kataba suddenly turned to Wang Chong. Although the fierce storm of yellow sand and powerful winds had cast a thick curtain across the ground. Kataba's psychic energy could still easily sense Wang Chong's position. Even though he didn't know the exact reason for this fierce sandstorm, everything had happened after he had finished his fusion. He was sure that it had to do with Wang Chong. "I'll kill you first and see if this sandstorm disappears." Kataba's killing intent erupted, and he suddenly opened his hand and unleashed an astonishing wave of black flames and lava at Wang Chong. Boom! In the middle of the wave, the black flames condensed into a spear. A split second after Kataba had raised his hand, this massive black spear was right in front of Wang Chong's face. This was a consequence of Kataba's fusion with the Ifrit. The Ifrit only acted on instinct, but Kataba could utilize every bit of the Ifrit's power to the maximum, making it even more difficult to deal with. But Kataba was underestimating Wang Chong's power. Delish! After activating the Stone of Destiny's ability, Wang Chong had seemingly predicted Kataba's response and barely dodged Kataba's sudden attack. "Lord Junior Guardian, Zhangqiu Jianxiong, Li Sai, come with me to deal with Kataba. Abusi, finish up with the enemy in the northwest and join with us." Wang Chong's body rumbled with stellar energy as he flew backwards several thousand feet, rapidly making distance between him and the black flame Ifrit. At the same time, Wang Chong raised his head and let out a sharp whistle. This whistle cut through the air like a sharp arrow, and not even the noise of the sandstorm could suppress it. Finally time? Deep in the northeastern region of the Tibetan Plateau, in a hidden and secluded area, Great General Bahram looked in the direction of the City of Steel, a sharp light in his eyes. If one looked behind Bahram, one would see tens of thousands of Khorasani soldiers, many of which were Aswaran cataphracts. There were also soldiers that Bahram had recruited from the Sassanid army. Just like Arabia, the Sassanid dynasty was a militaristic country. Ever since Wang Chong had been called back to the Great Tang capital and Khorasan had fallen, Bahram had been constantly recruiting Sassanids from Khorasan and vigorously training them. Bahram's experience in training soldiers and Su Hanshan's assistance had produced an extremely impressive army. "The king of foreign lands has sent the signal. Everyone, get ready. In 3 seconds we're moving out. Follow me onto the battlefield so that we Sassanids might annihilate Arabia, wash away our shame, and avenge our country." Bahram turned his head, a cold and murderous look in his eyes. Rumble! A moment later, the force of 100,000, some Khorasani heavy cavalry under Bahram's command, charged out of the Tibetan plateau and vanished into the yellow sand, attacking the Arab rear with fearless resolve. All of this appeared to have been planned out. Bahram, the Aswaran cataphracts, and the Sassanid cavalry showed no hesitation as they charged into the terrifying sandstorm. The destructive power of the sandstorm was enough to make any general despair. The sandstorm was targeted against the Arabs, but it was just as effective on Bahram and his army. But as they were charging in the same direction as the sandstorm did not have much impact on them. Moreover, they were much more prepared than the Arabs, as they were all wearing heavy armor. In addition, Wang Chong had also stipulated that each Sassanid horseman should hang 2 large plates of steel from the sides of their horses, meaning that they were even less affected by the sandstorm. Although some of them were still swept up into the storm, vanishing into the sky, Bahram and the Sassanids had expected this. Each of them stepped onto the battlefield with the resolve to die. The Sassanids and the Arabs could not share the same sky. When the Sassanid dynasty was first destroyed, the Arabs had massacred the city and almost wiped out every remaining member of the dynasty, even members of the royal household. And the second time, when Wang Chong was called back to the capital and the protection of the Great Tang was stripped away, countless Sassanids had fallen under the Arab assault of the city. Men, women, even the elderly and children were all massacred. If not for Wang Chong's threatening missive, even more Sassanids might have been killed. This was an eternal grudge, and as long as they could annihilate the Arabs and make them pay in a most painful fashion, the Sassanids did not care what price they would have to pay. Rumble! Under the cover of the sandstorm, the 100,000-some Sassanid soldiers charged toward the Arabs in the south. Meanwhile, as Wang Chong was using the Greater Void Step to avoid another of Kataba's attacks, a familiar voice rang out in Wang Chong's ears. "Wang Chong, Rain, can you use the Origin Immortal Sword to create a downpour?" I need rain to deal with him. Wang Chong followed the voice and saw the lone silence ancestor in the distance, looking up worriedly at the dark clouds and lightning with a worried and pensive look on his face. Wang Chong was momentarily startled, and then he understood. Though he didn't know if the lone silence ancestor's plan would be effective, and he had never tried to use the origin immortal sword to create rain before, at this time Wang Chong was willing to try any plan that might help him defeat Kitaba. What are you thinking? Did you ask me? As a callous voice exploded in their ears, a raging gout of flame swept toward them. Kitaba's black flame Ifrit had fashioned lava into a black scimitar that it was now swinging at Wang Chong. Such was the power of this slash that as it swept through the air, it cracked the surface of space like it was a mirror, and the blade of lava and flame was so condensed that it seemed to be made of actual metal. But just when Kitaba attacked, a massive fist attacked the black flame Ifrit from the back. Its impact immediately caused the black flame Ifrit's stellar energy to fiercely ripple, and even the scimitar was affected. Wang Xianxia, the person who had created such a large impact on the black flame Ifrit at this time, could only be the Great Tang's previous war god, Crown Prince's junior guardian Wang Xianxia. Even though he had been retired for many years and did not have as many tricks as Wang Chong, Wang Xianxia was extremely powerful, not much weaker than Wang Chong. Awoo! The king ape howled, baring its fangs as it barged through the Class 20 sandstorm, and right behind it were Gao Xianji, and Sishun, and the others. In flashes of light, Song Yuanyi, Xie Guangting, the Black Yin ancestor, and the myriad ghost ancestor also arrived. And there was a rumbling in the distance as Tong Luo Great General Abusi and his Tong Luo cavalry, having finally scattered that force of 200,000 Arab soldiers, charged through the sand, their capes flapping in the wind. In another direction, King Song and General Li rushed over with several dragon guards. King Song and the dragon guards had been dealing with the Arab governors and deputy governors this entire time, but they could no longer concern themselves with that. If the black flame Ifrit were not killed, all of them would die. Buzz! As Tang experts appeared from every direction, even Kitaba was forced to shift his focus. His expression turned grim, but his killing intent also increased. Rumble! As reinforcements arrived, Wang Chong used this moment to temporarily leave the encirclement, raising the Shenyuan's sword into the sky. Rumble! A blazing pillar of energy pierced through the sandstorm and into the dark clouds above. There was an explosion of thunder, and the clouds that the pillar of energy had sunk into began to writhe with silver snakes. Operate on a dead horse like it's a living horse. I have to at least try, Wang Chong remarked to himself as he looked up at the sky. The Shenyuan sword's lightning flash truly could create weather phenomena, but Wang Chong had never tried to summon a rainstorm with it. As the Shenyuan sword could summon clouds, it should have theoretically been able to create a thunderstorm. After all, while the people of this world might not know, Wang Chong, with his memories from an entirely different world, knew that if he brought a positive thundercloud together with a negative thundercloud, their interaction would produce a thunderstorm. And given the current weather, success would lead to a historic storm. More importantly, besides the Shenyuan sword, Wang Chong also had the Stone of Destiny to observe and disturb the weather. A few moments later, through the model in his mind, Wang Chong found two thunderclouds of opposite natures. Found it! These two thunderclouds covered an extremely large range, and through the nine heavens phenomena formation, they had developed extremely contrasting properties. Boom! Wang Chong aimed the Shenyuan sword at their point of intersection and swung. At this moment, a bolt of lightning that was more than 100 feet wide, appearing like an immense river, flashed across the clouds, splitting the skies of the northwest and illuminating the countless soldiers below. After the lightning vanished, the world was plunged into darkness. Silver snakes flashed in the darkness, and then raindrops the size of beans began to thump into the earth, the dark clouds emptying their moisture. The rain was originally like a curtain, but it rapidly intensified, becoming so dense and concentrated in seconds that it seemed like rivers were pouring down from the heavens. Whoosh! This intense rain had the lone silence ancestor ecstatic. He had not really expected success, but Wang Chong had really done it. A martial artist had been able to summon the winds and call the rain, controlling the weather. This was an absurd display of power, akin to that of a god. You did it. You really did it. The lone silence ancestors shone with excitement. The Northwest was an arid region that saw little rain. Not even the lone silence ancestor with all his power could do anything about it. But Wang Chong had clearly managed to draw over the rain clouds from the Tibetan Plateau, the Turkic steppe, and even Longxi. Now that he had this massive thunderstorm providing a nearly limitless supply of water, added to the fact that he had further improved his control of the water element after the Northwest expedition, he could get stronger and stronger. His power could rise to such dizzying heights that even though he was only a peak great general martial artist, he could unleash power equivalent to the subtle realm. Wang Chong, leave the rest to me. The lone silence ancestor opened his hand, upon which all the rain within a 10,000-foot radius of him suddenly turned into a vortex of water that began to howl toward the lone silence ancestor. A few moments later, this massive waterspout that seemed to link the heavens to the earth fused with the lone silence ancestor. Bang! The lone silence ancestor floated in the air, his aura growing stronger and stronger. With a single wave of his hand, a large swath of rain transformed into chilling mist and flew into the distance. There was a hissing sound as those unkillable fire men vanished in a cloud of steam. Rumble! A bone-chilling wave of water froze and shattered all the lava men within a radius of 10,000 feet. It took only a few seconds for all the fire men to be extinguished by the lone silence ancestor, even those ones Kataba had recently created with black flames. And the lone silence ancestor was just getting started. After dealing with the fire men, the lone silence ancestor shot to the ground and pressed a hand against the earth. Cold energy along with pouring rain seeped into the ground, freezing and hardening all the lava flows around the black flame Ifrit. The Ifrit's high-temperature flames had melted rock into lava, and by absorbing the lava, the Ifrit had increased its power. The lone silence ancestor controlled all the rain, turning it into frigid mists that hardened the lava, essentially draining the Ifrit's strength through its foundations. And without the fire men, the black flame Ifrit no longer posed a threat to the army at large. Wonderful! Even Wang Chong was elated to see this. The lone silence ancestor cultivated a water element divine art, and few on the battlefield could match him in a battle against the Ifrit. Ants, you think that this is enough? Kataba was furious. The storm Wang Chong had summoned could not threaten him, but the rain pouring down had a suppressive effect on the Ifrit. As the fire men were incessantly extinguished, the upper hand created by the Ifrit was fading. Without the endless army of fire men, the Ifrit was simply a larger behemoth. This substantial decrease in fighting strength was definitely not something Kataba wanted to see. I'll kill all of you first and then see what you can do. Boom! Black flames erupted from the Ifrit's body, sweeping toward the Tang experts around it. With one strike, the weakest of the group, Gao Xianji, and Sishun and Xieguangting were blown back. Meanwhile, Wang Zhongxi, Li Junxian, and Song Yuanyi grimly unleashed their most powerful attacks before rapidly retreating. The black flame Ifrit was the Ifrit's strongest form. Not only was it stronger than them, the heat of more than 200,000 degrees radiating from its body also posed an enormous threat. These terrifying temperatures were somewhat unbearable even for Wang Zhongxi, who was already in the subtle realm, let alone the others. The only one who could just barely clash with Kataba was Wang Chong. Rumble! The nightmare beast's power combined with the Shenyuan sword, and Wang Chong immediately unleashed a massive black sword at Kataba. Kataba's body swayed, the flames around him growing chaotic. Even though the black flame Ifrit form had increased the Ifrit's resistance, making it immune to most kinds of damage, Wang Chong's psychic energy attacks were still effective. More importantly, no matter how strong the black flame Ifrit, how hot its flames, or what technique Kataba used, Wang Chong needed to only slash his sword to strike the Ifrit. Kataba could not change this no matter what he did. Adnan, Abu Muslim, Lucas, and all the other governors and deputy governors, hear my order. All of you, come at once and assist me. Kataba's voice resounded through the world as he gathered all his flames on his right arm and unleashed them on Wang Chong. In the face of these frightening flames, Wang Chong was forced to pull back. Amidst the raging sands and bellowed orders, Adnan, Abu Muslim, Lucas, and all the other Arab governors and deputy governors heard Kataba's call and began to converge on the black flame Ifrit. 2 fists had it hard against 4 hands. While Kataba could suppress Wang Chong and the others, in the face of their endless barrage of attacks, Kataba was feeling a little hard-pressed. Only Adnan and the other Arab commanders joining in could swiftly end the battle. More importantly, the handiwork of Wang Chong and the lone Silence ancestor had made them feel very threatened, and they sensed that they needed to kill this powerful water element expert. Nay! But just when Adnan and the others were rushing toward Kataba, the neighing of horses resounded through the air, penetrating through the sandstorm. A few moments later, the earth rumbled, and everyone could sense a non-Arab army of more than 100,000 soldiers plunging into the rear of the Arab army like a sharp blade. Turmoil and chaos erupted through the ranks. Numerous Arab horsemen were instantly slain by this unknown force of cavalry. Adnan and Abu Muslim both turned their heads in shock. With this massive storm raging, none of them had expected another force to attack from the rear just when they were going to Kataba's aid. More importantly, this force was well-trained and well-equipped, maintaining formation in the middle of this sandstorm. Meanwhile, the Arabs had been completely scattered by the sandstorm and were thus unable to fight back. The Sassanids! It's the Sassanids! The Aswaran cataphracts! Run! Panicked shouts came from the rear, but their voices were quickly drowned out by the sand. On the front line, Adnan, Abu Muslim, and even Kataba all grimaced. Bahram and his Aswaran cataphracts. They had realized from the very beginning that Bahram and his Aswaran cataphracts were nowhere to be found in the Tang ranks. But at that time, both armies were already ready to fight. Moreover, the Arabs had the absolute advantage in numbers, so they had not put much attention onto finding these missing soldiers. But nobody had expected this army to be hiding behind them, waiting for the chance to attack the rear and deal the Arabs a lethal blow. Kill! At this time, the Tang army also heard the turmoil coming from the north. Reinvigorated, they charged at the Arabs, joining the Aswaran cataphracts in attacking the enemy from 2 sides. Boom boom boom. Ballista bolts howled through the air, shooting toward the northern battlefield. Screams and the thudding of bodies could be heard through the raging sandstorm. In that moment, numerous Arab horsemen had been slain. Su Hanshan and the ballistae under his command had been the first to strike from the Tang side. Su Hanshan had ordered his soldiers to crouch down before the sandstorm had come. But the Arab soldiers did not have it so easy. Moreover, Su Hanshan had specifically positioned his men so that they could use the northern steel walls to shelter from the sandstorm. On the other side, Li Sai didn't have as many apprehensions, simply leading his Wuxian cavalry fearlessly through the sandstorm and into the Arab ranks. Consecutive explosions rang out in the sandstorm. The rigorous training of the Wuxian cavalry and the tacit understanding they shared as fellow villagers was on full display. Even in the sandstorm, the Wuxian cavalry maintained orderly ranks. In comparison, the Arabs were in complete disarray under the assault of the sandstorm. The Arabs had soon suffered massive losses. 7,000, 8,000, 13,000, 17,000, 19,000, tens of thousands of Arab horsemen were being cut down like they were stalks of wheat. Attack! Chang Qianli and Shi Yuanqing seized the moment, joining together with Wang Chong's subordinates Xue Qianjun and Kong Xian to lead their army in charging toward the north. Cavalry were far more effective as a killing force than infantry, a fact which was acknowledged by all the countries of the world. Otherwise, the Arabian Empire would have never been able to rely on purely cavalry to conquer so many countries and begin considering the idea of uniting the entire world. But nothing was absolute. Cavalry was king because its charge was unstoppable. But a group of cavalry in disarray, milling about like headless flies, was even less than infantry. Kill! The units of the Tang army advanced like a moving wall. The infantry formations also began to display their power. In the sandstorm, the Arab cavalry were lost and fighting their own battles, and so when the Tang forces came upon them, they were basically doomed. Even when several dozen cavalry were gathered together, they had no formation or any sort of charging force, and it took only a few seconds for the Tang infantry to finish them. Kill! War cries came from all sides. For the Arab cavalry, it felt like the Tang soldiers were everywhere. Even more terrifying was that there was also a force of Tang cavalry riding through their ranks, constantly attacking different locations and impossible to pin down. No one knew how many soldiers this force consisted of or when it would strike. The Arabs didn't even know if the soldiers right next to them were these Tang. The Arabs had never before been so panicked and fearful. Even though the Arabs had 1 million soldiers on their side, each of them still felt like they were facing the Tang army alone. This battle had already gone on for more than 8 hours. While the Arabs had lost 700,000 to 800,000 soldiers, they still had a force of 1,700,000, far more than the Great Tang. In comparison, the Great Tang had lost 170,000 to 80,000, leaving 410,000 to 20,000 soldiers. Even with the Sassanid reinforcements, it was only 510,000 soldiers or so. The gap in numbers was still very large. But at this moment, the Arabs were losing men at an unprecedented rate. 100,000, 120,000, 180,000, 240,000. The Arabs utterly collapsed in the face of the Great Tang's disciplined and cohesive assault. The worst thing was that they had no idea where the enemy was. In their panic, several Arab soldiers charged toward the sound of fighting and began to fight with what they thought were Tang soldiers, but they ended up realizing that they were on the same side. As they sensed the astonishing losses sustained by the army, Adnan, Abu Muslim, and the various governors and deputy governors all scowled. Bastard! They gnashed their teeth, but they knew that there was nothing that they could do. The sandstorm had thrown the Arab army into disarray. In the short time that had passed, Adnan's Savage Fang army and Abu Muslim's army had been scattered, and gathering them back together was an impossible task. Moreover, the sandstorm was still intensifying, and the incessant neighing of horses indicated that the most important companions of the Arab cavalry were so panicked that they were beyond control, only furthering the disorder in the army. A thick black flame blasted aside the sandstorm while a thunderous bellow traveled through the world. Everyone, hear my order. Attack downwind. Seeing the army in chaos, Qutbah had finally taken action. Buzz. Qutbah's voice instantly stabilized the chaotic ranks. Kyle! Some of the soldiers began to recklessly charge southward, and they were joined by more and more. This man is truly formidable. He can't be allowed to survive no matter what, or else he will be a major problem for the Central Plains. Wang Chong's heart shivered. In this sandstorm, it was impossible to differentiate between soldiers or directions, so it would not have mattered if Qutbah had ordered his men to charge in any direction. But the soldiers could all determine for themselves which way the wind blew. The north had the fewest soldiers, only Bahram and his 100,000 some heavy cavalry. However, it was impossible to build up a powerful charge while traveling against the sandstorm, and the sand would end up blowing into one's eyes, ears, and mouth. The best countermeasure was to charge with the wind, southward toward the more numerous Tang soldiers. Sadly, this is just pouring water on a cart. It can't turn the tides. Wang Chong's expression quickly turned cold. Cavalry that couldn't see where they were going or what direction was which, and that were unable to assemble into formation, were incapable of displaying their usual power. Placing them against the orderly and impregnable ranks of the Tang army was like throwing an egg at a rock. As anything Qutbah did could not alter the course of the battle, the most important task was to kill Qutbah and remove the largest threat from the battlefield. Leave Abu Muslim and the other Arab governors to me. The rest of you, focus on dealing with Qutbah. Wang Chong roared, acting before Qutbah could strike. Buzz. Using the Greater Void step to its limit, Wang Chong created countless afterimages and began to work his way toward the north of the Black Flame Ifrit. Nightmare Beast. Think of a way to control those Arab governors and make them attack each other. Wang Chong sternly said, his eyes as sharp as blades. Down in the Origin Immortal Cave, the Nightmare Beast had already been able to use psychic energy to disrupt and influence the minds of others. Now that it had absorbed the psychic energy of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, growing much stronger than it had been underground, its level of control was certain to be even more frightening. Yes, Master, the Nightmare Beast replied without hesitation. Boom! It sent a bolt of psychic energy at those charging governors and deputy governors, and in a flash, It had broken through their mental barriers and penetrated into their minds. Ah! Kill the Tang. Protect the Hierophant. Watch out for the Tang ambush. Damn! I'll kill you. Behind Adnan and Abu Muslim, the army suddenly broke out into mayhem, the various governors and deputy governors snarling at each other as they attacked their comrades and madly shouted. A governor took out his pitch-black scimitar and even attacked Abu Muslim from the back. Abu Muslim felt danger and instantly swung his own saber, blocking the lethal blow. When he saw that his attacker was the governor of Aden, he was both shocked and enraged. Bastard! What are you doing? Clang! Out of the corner of his eyes, Abu Muslim spotted two more governors attacking Adnan from the right and left. Watch out! Their minds are being controlled. This is probably the doing of that Tang commander. Adnan furiously called out. His blade of Mukalla exploded with dazzling light, petrifying the two governors and knocking them from their horses. Seeking death. At this moment, no one was angrier than Kataba. His expression chilled, and the raging flames around him quickly turned into countless tentacles that attacked Wang Zhongxi, Zhangqiu Jianqiong, Gao Xianji, and the others. At the same time, he sent a fist wreathed in flames and smoke hurtling toward Wang Chong. Rumble. The immense force behind this punch immediately caused space to compress, and even the surrounding sand was blasted back 1,000 feet. But Wang Chong merely swayed his body and dodged, having already predicted this attack. Kataba, we have plenty of time to fight. Wang Chong's eyes were cold as he waved his right hand, unleashing a crimson sun from his body. Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. Wang Chong's entire body turned into this crimson sun, and the fearsome pull it exerted swiftly grabbed two nearby Arab governors. Boom! The moment their bodies touched Wang Chong, they were rendered motionless while their stellar energy flowed out of them like a great river. These governors were no weaklings, and it would normally have been quite difficult for Wang Chong to seize them and devour their energy. But the nightmare beast's intense disruption had made them lose their rationality, and they were full of openings. For Wang Chong, they were as good as lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Lord Junior Guardian, let me help you. As the two governors shriveled into husks, Wang Chong dropped their corpses to the ground and thrust a palm in Wang Zhongxi's direction, sending him all the stellar energy he had just absorbed. There's no need. Wang Zhongxi wanted to refuse. After all, Wang Chong had consumed significant amounts of energy, and their stellar energies were of different natures. But when he sensed the stellar energy in his body, he immediately shut his mouth. Wang Chong had not sent over the power of the great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art, but a stellar energy that was exactly identical to Wang Zhongxi's. If he hadn't known its origins, Wang Zhongxi would have mistaken it for the stellar energy he had created himself. Wang Chong had used the Origin Immortal Art to convert the stellar energies of those two governors and then transfer it to Wang Zhongxi. While Wang Zhongxi had said nothing during the entire battle, dealing with the Ifrit and Kataba had been extremely taxing on him. But the previous war god of the Great Tang would never say so. With this replenishment of energy, Wang Zhongxi felt all his exhaustion being wiped away, and he returned to his peak, perhaps even stronger. Good. I'll hold down Kataba while you help the others, Wang Zhongxi sternly said, immediately understanding Wang Chong's aims. At Wang Zhongxi's level of cultivation, he could discern Wang Chong's intentions from a single act. Wang Chong had both the Origin Immortal Art and the Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art, and no one else was capable of transferring energy to others like this. And during this battle, Wang Zhongxi, Gao Xianji, and the others had all greatly exhausted their strength. Without Wang Chong's help, the others wouldn't be able to fight for much longer. Wang Chong simply nodded in understanding, and then he used the Greater Void Step to dodge another of Kataba's thunderous blows. At the same time, he waved his right hand, grabbing an Arab governor with the Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art, causing him to fly in a massive arc toward Wang Chong. Boom! Suddenly, in a cold flash of light, Abu Muslim slashed his saber, creating a wave of saber energy several hundred feet long that attempted to cut off the pull, flying between Wang Chong and the governor. Abu Muslim, you're seeking death. You're no longer any match for me. If I were you, I would have never taken part in this war. Wang Chong's dantian trembled, and his stellar energy transformed into a massive azure fist that shattered Abu Muslim's saber energy and sent him flying back. Abu Muslim paled, and there was anger in his eyes, but he could say nothing. Wang Chong was openly humiliating him with these words. But it was exactly as Wang Chong had said. Wang Chong was on an entirely different level of power compared to the Battle of Talas, and not even Qutayba Reborn would have been able to deal with him, let alone Abu Muslim. Seeing Abu Muslim withdraw, Wang Chong laughed in scorn, but he did not pursue. He would have plenty of chances to deal with Abu Muslim. His first priority was to kill the weakest Arab governors and transfer their energy to Xianxia Jianxiong and the others. Buzz. With a thought, Wang Chong grabbed another governor confused by the nightmare beast and absorbed his energy. With a thrust of his palm, he sent a torrent of stellar energy into Xianxia Jianxiong's body. The tiger of the empire was at his limit, but with the boost from Wang Chong he was revitalized. Great! Wang Chong, with you here, we can't lose. Xianxia Jianxiong heartily laughed, seeming 100 times more energetic. Qutayba, no matter what you fuse with, you'll always lose. Let's fight once more. As Xianxia Jianxiong spoke, his dantian unleashed a majestic pillar of energy. He leapt into the air and punched, unleashing a torrent of energy at the black flame Ifrit. Rumble! More explosions rang out, and under the attacks of Wang Zhongxi, Xianxia Jianxiong, and the others, Qutayba was forced to give up his focus on Wang Chong. This only made Qutayba even more furious. Damn things! I'll kill all of you first. Killing that brat later will end with the same result. Qutayba's body roiled with black smoke, and high-temperature black flames howled as they blotted out the sky and hurtled toward the Tang experts. Everyone shivered in fear and immediately backed away. Back away when the enemy advances, and advance when the enemy retreats. This was the tactic they had all agreed to use on Qutayba. Those terrifying flames remained a barrier that none of them could overcome. While Qutayba was battling with Wang Zhongxi and the others, Wang Chong had encountered a powerful foe of his own. Buzz! Without any warning, the space in front of Wang Chong trembled, and then there was a cold flash of light and a massive bang as a sharp wave of saber energy cut toward him, leaving a scar more than 700 feet long in its wake. The fabric of space was as glossy and smooth as a mirror where the saber energy cut through it. If Wang Chong had not been sharp enough to sense this attack coming, he would have been struck by this attack. Abu Muslim, why are you retreating? Let's work together and kill him. Large quantities of air began to transform into stones of various sizes that rained down. Adnan floated in the air with the blade of Makala, a look of anger on his face. As he spoke, he unleashed another wave of energy with the blade of Makala, which swept toward Wang Chong like a hurricane. Humph! You think that just having a divine weapon means you can deal with me? Wang Chong did not back down this time. His expression cold, he poured stellar energy into the Shenyuan sword and slashed. Bang! The two divine weapons of the east and west clashed with their energies. After a few moments of stalemate, the energy created by the blade of Makala crumpled, and the golden sword chi swept toward Adnan. Ah! Adnan panicked, his zeal draining away like air out of a punctured balloon. Crying out in alarm, Adnan rapidly retreated, only barely managing to dodge Wang Chong's attack. He immediately felt cold sweat coming out of every pore on his body. He had fought nearly evenly with Wang Zhongxi, so he thought that he could hold down Wang Chong and give the Hierophant an opportunity. He had never imagined that Wang Chong would be so strong. What a pity! I let him escape. As he watched Adnan beat a hasty retreat, Wang Chong sighed in slight regret. If Adnan had been half a second slower, he would have been sliced in two. While Wang Chong was younger than Wang Zhongxi, Wang Chong had even greater achievements. Moreover, Wang Zhongxi had a simple and majestic fighting style, each move grandiose and upright. But Wang Chong was different. Of the 10 great arts of the Central Plains he had numerous techniques that he could constantly switch between. It was simply impossible for Adnan to show off in front of him with just a single weapon. That weapon of his is too special. If not for that weapon's disruption, I would have already taken control of him. the nightmare beast said into Wang Chong's mind. Other than Kataba, there were only two people on the battlefield it could not influence: Abu Muslim and Adnan. Abu Muslim was known as the governor of iron and blood, and had a formidable will. While the Battle of Talas had made him a joke in Arabia, it had only made his will even more formidable and determined. When attempting to disturb his mind, the nightmare beast had encountered stiff resistance. As for Adnan, it was purely due to the blade. In a brief conversation, Wang Chong decided on the strategy for dealing with these two. Forget about them for now. Kataba is more important. If you notice them trying to join the battle, use psychic energy to disrupt them or take control of the governors around them and have them attack. If you really can't deal with them, I'll intervene. Abu Muslim and Adnan were just small fry. The crux was Kataba, and without Wang Chong's intervention, Wang Zhongxi and the others were clearly on the back foot. Bang! Wang Chong slashed at Abu Muslim and Adnan, but his body rapidly moved in the opposite direction, toward an Arab governor who was madly hacking at empty air. Wang Chong quickly grabbed the back of the man's neck and drained him using the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art. Just when Wang Chong was preparing to transfer this energy, a voice broke through the sands. Wang Chong, transfer that energy to me and I'll help out the others. Song Yuanyi called out, his robes and hair flapping in the wind. After a moment of confusion, Wang Chong understood. Song Yuanyi cultivated the Eternal Spring mantra, which was extremely effective at healing the injuries of others, including those of ordinary soldiers. By working together, the pair could maximize how this energy was used. As these thoughts flew through his mind, Wang Chong sent the drained stellar energy together with some of his own energy into Song Yuanyi's body. Ha! Upon obtaining this vast energy, Song Yuanyi swelled with power, and his eyes shone with an intimidating light. A moment later, his dantian began to tremble and his hands spread apart. His eternal spring stellar energy split into 8 streams that entered the bodies of the others and began to rapidly heal their injuries. The power of the eternal spring stellar energy healed all their injuries, both internal and external. Bang! Song Yuanyi stomped a foot on the ground, and a shockwave of green energy bursting with life rolled out, jolting aside the yellow sand as it rolled into the bodies of several Tang infantry. These people had originally been rather badly wounded, but this jade-green energy instantly began to heal them. In the blink of an eye, they had been restored to peak form. Wonderful! Kill! The energized Tang soldiers once more threw themselves into the battle, heading to where the fighting was most intense. The pairing of Wang Chong and Song Yuanyi was a perfect match. In just a few moments, nearly 10,000 Tang soldiers had been healed of their heavy injuries and rejoined the battle. Eternal spring stellar energy was much more effective on an ordinary soldier compared to a martial artist. Wang Chong rejoiced to see so many soldiers recovering, and he gave himself a pat on the back for wisely choosing to invite Song Yuanyi. Black Flame Moon God. As Wang Chong and Song Yuanyi were healing the Tang forces, a bone-chilling voice exploded out of the sandstorm, rumbling through the world. Before the two could react, the fabric of space shuddered, and Wang Chong turned his head in alarm. What Wang Chong saw was a massive sun made of black flames, so dense it seemed solid as it rose above the black flame Ifrit's head. In just a few short moments, 6 suns of black flames had appeared above the black flame Ifrit's head. Their immense energy blocked out the storm for tens of thousands of feet around, preventing any rain or sand from getting in. Their sheer power had opened up a clearing in the middle of the battlefield.